I was sitting on my back porch yesterday afternoon, just as the heat of a Charlotte summer day was starting to give way to that soft golden evening light we get here in North Carolina. I had my eyes closed, and I was listening to the distant sounds of the city, the faint rumble of the light rail, and the occasional siren off in the distance. For most of my life, those sounds meant work. They meant pressure. They meant a schedule that never stopped, and a set of responsibilities that felt like they were resting entirely on my shoulders. I spent 40 years in transit operations, starting out on the ground and eventually working my way up into supervision. In those years, I learned how to manage thousands of moving parts, how to keep a city's blood flowing through its bus routes and train tracks, and how to stay calm when every gauge on the dashboard was blinking red. But the one thing I never learned until much later was how to manage the pressure building up inside my own chest. I sat there on the porch and felt that familiar, tight drumming behind my eyes, a sensation I used to call hard work, but now I know is the sound of my body begging for a break. The silence that follows a long career can be surprisingly loud. When you retire, you think the stress is just going to evaporate like morning mist. But for many of us, the habits of a lifetime don't just disappear because we stop punching a clock. I carried that high alert survival mode right into my 70s, and it showed in my numbers. I remember sitting in the doctor's office about 6 months ago, feeling that cold gray cuff tighten around my arm. I watched the needle jump and the digital numbers climb higher and higher until they stopped at 164 over 92. My doctor didn't even have to say a word. I could see the concern in the way he adjusted his glasses. He told me I was staring down the barrel of a third daily medication just to keep the pipes from bursting. That is a heavy thing to hear when you feel like you've been doing everything right. It felt like my own body was a system I could no longer supervise. But something happened that changed my entire perspective on how we handled these spikes. My daughter Danielle, who has always been the one to nudge me toward a more natural way of looking at my health, sat me down and asked me a very simple question. She asked me if I remembered what we did at the transit yard when a high-pressure pneumatic line was about to fail. I told her we didn't just keep adding more tape or more weight to the line. We found the relief valve and we opened it. We bled the excess pressure out of the system before it could do any damage. She looked at me and said that I had been carrying a relief valve inside me my entire life, but I had completely forgotten how to use it. She was talking about my breath. I honestly thought it sounded too simple to be real. I thought breathing was just something that happened in the background while I was busy worrying. But over the last few months, I've discovered 3 specific techniques that have changed my life. They are my mechanical overrides, my ways of manually telling my nervous system to stand down. Today I want to share those 3 tricks with you, because I know there are thousands of men and women out there just like me. People who feel that sudden spike of heat in their face when the phone rings or when the bills come in. I want to show you how to find your own relief valve. I'm going to tell you about the 4-7-8 method that I use every morning before I even get out of bed, the resonant breathing that keeps me steady during the day, and the alternate nostril technique that I save for when the pressure feels like it's reaching a breaking point. These aren't just exercises. They are tools I've tested on my own body, watching my monitor drop 15 points in a matter of minutes. I've learned that while the numbers matter, the patterns behind them matter more. You don't want the first real warning to be an emergency, and these techniques are how we stay ahead of the alarm. I spent decades supervising heavy machinery, and the one thing you learn early on is that every engine has a governor, a device that keeps it from running too fast and burning itself out. The human body has one too, and it's called the autonomic nervous system. It's got 2 settings. One is the sympathetic system, which is the gas pedal. It's what gets you moving when there's trouble. It dumps adrenaline into your blood, tightens your muscles, and constricts your blood vessels, so your heart has to pump harder and faster to get the job done. In my line of work, we stayed on that gas pedal all day long. We lived in a state of constant emergency. The problem is that many of us never learn how to switch over to the other setting, the parasympathetic system. That's the brake pedal. That's the rest and digest mode. It's the only state where your blood vessels can truly relax and widen out. For a long time, I didn't think I could control which pedal my body was pressing. I thought if I felt stressed, my blood pressure just had to be high. But Danielle showed me the research, the kind of stuff that usually stays buried in medical journals that most doctors don't have time to read during a 7-minute appointment. She showed me that by changing the rhythm and depth of my breath, I could physically force my nervous system to switch from the gas to the brakes. It's a biological hack. It's a way of sending a direct signal to the brainstem saying that the danger is past and it's safe to relax the arterial walls. When you breathe slow and deep, you are essentially opening the valves on a high-pressure line. The pressure doesn't just go down, it drops immediately. I've seen my own systolic number drop from 155 down to 138 just by sitting in my armchair and doing these exercises for less than 5 minutes. The first technique I ever tried, and the one that stays with me every single day, is what they call 4-7-8 breathing. I like to think of it as the system reset. I remember the first time I did it. I was lying in bed, feeling that familiar morning anxiety, that heavy feeling in my chest that comes when you start thinking about everything you have to get done. My heart was already racing, and I hadn't even stood up yet. I decided to try what Danielle told me. You breathe in through your nose for a count of 4, you hold that breath for a count of 7, and then you let it out through your mouth with a soft whooshing sound for a count of 8. The secret isn't just in the deep breath, it's in that long, slow exhale. In the transit world, when we wanted to bring a heavy bus to a smooth stop, we didn't just slam on the brakes, we applied steady, controlled pressure. That 8-second exhale is you applying the air brakes to your own heart. I sat there and did 4 cycles of that breathing. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. By the 3rd cycle, I felt a physical shift. It was like a wave of coolness washing over my shoulders. That tight knot in my stomach just started to unravel. I reached over and grabbed my blood pressure monitor off the nightstand. I had checked it just a few minutes before, and it was sitting at 152. After those 4 breaths, it was down to 141. 11 points in less than 2 minutes, without a single pill. I couldn't believe it. I started making it my morning ritual. Before I say my prayers, before I check the news, I give my body those 4 breaths. It sets the baseline for the day. It tells my heart that we aren't starting the day in an emergency. Control starts with what you stop normalizing, and I stopped normalizing starting my day with high pressure. Now let's talk about how to actually do this together, because it's one thing to hear about it and another thing to feel the change in your own veins. If you're sitting down right now, I want you to just relax your shoulders. We men have a habit of wearing our shoulders like earrings when we're stressed, keeping them hiked up high and tight. Let them drop. Put one hand on your belly, right where your belt sits. When you breathe in, you shouldn't see your chest puffing out like you're standing at attention in the army. You should feel your belly push out against your hand. That means you're using your diaphragm, the big muscle that actually draws air deep into the lungs, where the blood calming magic happens. Empty your lungs right now. Just blow it all out. Now close your mouth and breathe in through your nose for 1, 2, 3, 4. Now hold it. Just feel the stillness for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now open your mouth and blow it out slow, like you're whistling, for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You might feel a little bit of tingle in your fingers, or a little bit of lightheadedness the first few times you do it. That's just your body getting a hit of oxygen it hasn't seen in years. It's the feeling of your blood vessels finally opening up. I told my friend James about this. James is about my age, 72, and he's been struggling with his numbers for a decade. Every time he goes to the doctor, his pressure spikes into the 170s. They call it white coat syndrome, but really it's just his nervous system reacting to the stress of being watched. I taught him the 4-7-8 method. He started doing it in the parking lot before he walked into the clinic. He'd sit in his truck, do 4 cycles, and walk in calm. The last time he went, his reading was 138. His doctor actually asked him if he had changed his diet or started a new exercise routine. James just smiled and told him he had learned how to use his brakes. The second technique is even simpler, and it's the one I use when I'm out and about, maybe standing in line at the grocery store or sitting in traffic on Independence Boulevard. It's called resonant breathing. In the transit yard, we always talked about the sweet spot of an engine, that specific RPM where everything was in perfect balance, where the vibration was at its lowest and the efficiency was at its highest. Resonant breathing is finding the sweet spot for your heart. It's a steady rhythm of 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. No holding, no fancy sounds, just a smooth, continuous loop of air. Research shows that when we breathe at this specific rate, which works out to about 6 breaths per minute, our heart rate variability reaches its peak. It's like the swinging of a pendulum finding its perfect natural arc. I remember a few weeks ago, I was sitting in a long line at the pharmacy. It was crowded, it was hot, and the person in front of me was having a long, complicated argument with the clerk. I could feel my frustration rising. I could feel that heat crawling up the back of my neck, and I knew my pressure was climbing right along with it. In the past, I would have just stood there and let my blood boil, thinking that was just the price of being in a hurry. But I caught myself. I put my hands in my pockets, closed my eyes for just a second, and started the 5 in, 5 out rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out. I did that for about 3 minutes. By the time I got to the counter, I wasn't frustrated anymore. I was steady. My heart wasn't thumping against my ribs. I felt like I was back in control. The reason this works so well for those of us over 60 is that our cardiovascular system isn't as elastic as it used to be. Our arteries have seen a lot of miles. They can be a bit stubborn. But resonant breathing creates a kind of harmony between your heart and your lungs. It synchronizes the electrical signals in your body. It's like timing the traffic lights on a busy city street so that the cars can flow through without constant stopping and starting. When you find that rhythm, your blood pressure doesn't just drop. It levels out. It stays stable. I tell my son Marcus, who's always worried about protection and risk, that this is the best insurance policy I've ever found. It doesn't cost a dime, but it keeps the system from overpressurizing when life gets chaotic. It's the maintenance schedule that keeps the bus running for another 100,000 miles. Let's try a minute of that resonant breathing right now. It's the easiest one to do while you're doing other things. You can do this while you're reading the paper, or even while you're talking to someone if you practice it enough. Just find that smooth flow. In through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now out through the nose or mouth, whichever is more comfortable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just keep that loop going. No pauses at the top, no pauses at the bottom. It's like a wheel turning. In for 5, out for 5. Feel your heart rate start to settle. Feel the muscles in your face relax. Most people don't realize how much tension they carry in their jaw until they start breathing like this. Let your teeth part slightly. Let your tongue fall away from the roof of your mouth. You're telling your body that the world is okay, that there's no reason to be on high alert. You're finding your sweet spot. The third technique is what I call my emergency rescue. It's more involved, and you might look a little funny doing it in public, so I usually save it for when I'm at home and the numbers are being particularly stubborn. It's called alternate nostril breathing. Now, if you had told me 10 years ago that I'd be sitting in my living room in Charlotte, North Carolina, closing off one side of my nose to lower my blood pressure, I would have told you that you were talking to the wrong man. I'm a transit supervisor, a straight shooter, not someone who goes in for what I used to call fancy tricks. But when my cousin passed away after ignoring his high numbers for too long, I realized that my pride was a very poor substitute for being alive. I decided I was going to be open-minded about anything that actually worked. And let me tell you, this works faster than anything else I've ever tried. It's based on the idea that the two sides of our body and the two sides of our brain have different impacts on our nervous system. When you breathe specifically through your left nostril, you are directly stimulating the parasympathetic, calming side of your nervous system. When you alternate back and forth, you are physically forcing your brain to balance itself out. It's like the balancing of the wheels on a heavy-duty truck. If one side is out of alignment, the whole thing starts to shake and vibrate until something breaks. This technique brings everything back into alignment. I use it whenever I feel that sudden spike of panic, or when I've had a particularly stressful conversation with someone. It's my way of manually bleeding the pressure out of a line that's dangerously close to a blowout. Here's how I do it. I sit up straight in my favorite chair. I take my right hand and I use my thumb to close off my right nostril. I breathe in deep through the left side for 4 counts. Then I use my ring finger to close the left side, release the thumb, and breathe out through the right side for 4 counts. Then I breathe in through that same right side, close it with the thumb, and breathe out through the left. That's one full cycle. It forces you to focus entirely on the movement of the air. You can't worry about your mortgage or your health insurance when you're focusing on which nostril is open. It breaks the cycle of stress immediately. I've seen this technique pull a reading from 160 down to 145 in less than 5 minutes. It is a powerful, powerful tool to have in your pocket. I remember a night a few months ago when I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing and I could feel that heavy, pulsing sensation in my neck that usually means my pressure is up. I got out of bed, sat on the edge of the mattress, and did 10 cycles of alternate nostril breathing. It was like someone had turned down the volume on the world. My heart settled into a calm, steady rhythm. The pulsing in my neck stopped. I felt a sense of peace that I haven't felt in a long time. I went back to sleep and slept better than I had in weeks. It's about having a rescue plan that doesn't involve a trip to the emergency room. It's about being the supervisor of your own health. Pressure rarely rises alone. It rises with the habits we ignore. And I was ignoring the habit of staying balanced. If you're ready to try it, just bring your right hand up. Close that right nostril with your thumb. Breathe in through the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now close the left with your ring finger. Open the right and blow it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep it closed on the left. Breathe in through the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now close the right, open the left, and blow it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the rhythm. It's a bit of a dance, but once you get the hang of it, you can feel the stress just dissolving. I call it Nadi Shodhana, which I think is a beautiful name for something so practical. It means clearing the channels, and that's exactly what it feels like. It feels like you're clearing the blockage in your own life. The key to all of this, the thing that makes the difference between a temporary drop and a real change in your health, is consistency. You can't just do these exercises once and expect your blood pressure to stay low forever. It's just like the maintenance on a bus. You don't just change the oil once and then drive it for 10 years. You have to stay on top of it. I built these 3 tricks into a daily protocol that keeps me steady. I do the 4-7-8 method 4 times a day. Once when I wake up, once around lunchtime, once in the late afternoon, and once right before I go to sleep. It only takes 2 minutes each time. That's 8 minutes a day to train my nervous system to stay in the calm zone. Then I use the resonant breathing, the 5 in, 5 out, for longer sessions when I'm sitting and watching the news or reading a book. I try to give myself at least 10 minutes of that twice a day. It's my maintenance routine. It keeps my baseline pressure lower overall. And I keep the alternate nostril breathing for those emergency moments, those times when the world gets a little too loud or the stress gets a little too heavy. Since I started this protocol, I haven't had a single spike into the dangerous zone. My doctor was so impressed that at my last checkup, he actually took me off one of my medications. He said he'd never seen a patient my age take that much control over their own numbers just by changing the way they breathe. I know there's a lot of skepticism out there. I know there are men of my generation who think that if it's not a pill or a surgery, it's not real medicine. We were raised to measure our strength by what we could endure, and we were taught that health was something the doctor gave you in a bottle. But I'm here to tell you that there is a different kind of strength. There is the strength of a man who understands how his own engine works. There is the peace that comes from knowing you have the tools to manage your own pressure. My wife Gloria has noticed a huge difference in me. She says I'm calmer, I'm more present, and I don't get as rattled by the little things anymore. My grandson told me the other day that I don't seem as grumpy as I used to. I laughed, but I knew he was right. When you aren't carrying around 160 points of pressure in your head all day, you have a lot more room for joy. I want you to take a look at your own life right now. Are you living in a constant state of emergency? Is your gas pedal stuck to the floor? If you have a monitor at home, I want you to go grab it. Take a reading right now. Write it down. Then I want you to pick one of these techniques, maybe just the resonant breathing, 5 in and 5 out, and do it for 5 minutes. Set a timer on your phone and really focus on it. Don't worry about anything else for those 5 minutes. Then take your reading again. See the proof for yourself. Once you see those numbers drop, you'll realize that you aren't a victim of your genetics or your age. You have a relief valve. You have a way to stand down. There's a comfort in knowing that as long as I'm breathing, I have a way to help myself. I don't have to wait for the next appointment or the next prescription. I can sit on my porch in Charlotte, listen to the city, and keep my heart in the safe zone. It's a quiet, steady kind of power. It's the feeling of a man who has finally learned how to supervise the most important operation of all, his own life. I'm not saying it's a cure-all. I still eat my greens, I still watch my salt, and I still take the medication my doctor prescribes. But the breathing is the foundation. It's the structural support that makes everything else work better. Most people wait for a scare before they change. I had my scare, and I decided I wasn't going to let it be the end of my story. I decided I was going to use everything I learned in 40 years of work to keep my own system running smooth. I want you to make that same decision. Don't wait for the emergency. Open the relief valve today. Start with those 4 breaths tomorrow morning. Feel the stillness. Feel the cooling sensation in your shoulders. Remember that the heart pays attention to what we repeat every day. Repeat the calm. Repeat the breath. Repeat the control. I'm going to sit here for another few minutes before I head inside for dinner. Gloria is making something that smells wonderful, and I want to be fully present for it. I'm going to do a few cycles of that resonant breathing just to make sure I'm starting my evening in the sweet spot. It's a good life, and I intend to be here for as much of it as I can. I hope you'll join me on this path. It's not a race, it's just a steady, rhythmic walk toward a healthier version of ourselves. One breath at a time. I'll be here, still moving, still learning, and still looking forward to tomorrow. You take care of yourself, and I'll see you soon.